So I think I would start off, the first point that I would make, and the most important point, is that whatever I've done in my life, writing, being mayor of Burlington, congressman, US senator, I have always believed from the bottom of my heart that everything that I do and what I say represents the vast majority of the people. Sometimes I think there are progressives out there who think, well, we're fighting for social justice, we're this, we're that. It's too bad that we're in a minority, but someday the majority will catch up with us. I've never believed that for one moment. Everything I'm going to tell you tonight that John and I are going to discuss, everything I've ever talked about, every idea that I've ever espoused, I believe is what the vast majority of the people of our country believe. And the real fringe group, the real minority, are those folks, often from the billionaire class, who want to give huge tax breaks to people who don't need it and cut back desperately on programs that people do need. That's the fringe. And so when I was elected mayor of Burlington, what did we do? How did we run the campaign? We just went out to the community, went out to the low-income community, and we said, look, city government is not addressing your very serious needs. We went out to parents and we said, is the city government doing enough for the kids in the community? And one of the people who came out on that turned out later on to be my wife, Jane, who's sitting over there, and later became head of our youth office. And we talked to the workers, the employees in City Hall. And we said, do you think you're getting a fair shake from local government? They said, no. We said to the women in the community, do you believe that City Hall has been opened up to women? And they said, no. And we talked to the environmental community. And they said, no, we're not doing enough. And you add all of that up, you know what you got? You got the vast majority of the people. Now, does every one of those groups agree with every other group on every issue? They don't. And the first point, when we talk about organizing, that we have to understand is that within this room, there are people who have a whole lot of differences. So what? That's life. As my wife will tell you, she and I have a lot of differences. Probably some of you and your spouses and partners may have differences. But the important point is not what divides us, but what brings us together. So, John, you know what? I've been going to the South lately.
I know you. South Carolina a week ago.
I have never, for 1 second, accepted this nonsense about red states, blue states. I don't believe it for a second. In every state of the country, you have working people, you have low-income people who are struggling to keep themselves alive economically. They are on our side. And you can't ignore those people. I was in South Carolina recently. I was in North Carolina, the Mississippi. There are good, decent people there who want to make sure that we create jobs for all Americans and have health care for every single American. Don't accept that division. We are the vast majority of the people. The Koch brothers and their friends are a small minority. Never, ever forget that. So what I am assessing right now, and it's easy to talk. I can give you all the great speeches. But this I do know, by the way. And we talk about political revolution in America and the things that have to change. Anybody, Bernie Sanders, anybody else, who thinks that he or she could become president without the active support of a huge, emboldened grassroots movement is crazy. There is no way in the world that you can take on the big money interests without involving millions and millions of people. For example, right now, just to give you one example of 100, we're dealing with the issue of the fact that college is increasingly becoming unaffordable and that millions of people are chained, who graduated college or graduate school, are chained to unbelievably high debts. Half the young people in my office have debts of $50,000, $100,000 a year. Go to law school, medical school, $100,000, $200,000.
There's a young woman out there who just raised her hand and said that's her.
All right.
Over
The only thing
$100,000.
that I want to say, over 100, did you go to graduate school? There you go. All right. She is in serious trouble because she has to pay back that debt. She doesn't have a job.
Is that, can I just interrupt by saying, is that your mother sitting next to you? Just a friend.
Okay.
If it was your mother, you'd be in really serious trouble. All right.
This is young people all over this country. Now, the point is, we're going to bring up legislation soon. We are not going to get the Republicans, I think, to support it. Do you know how we change that? You know how we deal with your debt? You and a few million other young people march on Washington, make the politicians aware of what is going on. So the point is, you know, you ask me, if you just had the smartest, best person in the White House who did not have the active, and I'm talking about it in a way that you have not envisaged yet. No president, no progressive president can succeed unless there are millions and millions and millions of people actively involved in the struggle every single day. If anybody in this room thinks, well, gee, I hope Bernie runs for president, I'll vote for him, I'll support him, I'll send him $25, and I'll wish him the best of luck. It doesn't work that way. Bernie Sanders or any other serious person cannot succeed against the opposition we face today. The billions of dollars that will be thrown against them. Give you an example. Can I, John? I'm going off the deep end here, I know that. Conservative friend of mine in the Senate, conservative guy, honest guy, decent guy. He said, Bernie, I'm working on a kind of a modest piece of legislation regarding the reform of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mae. And I don't even know what their bill is. It's not going to be a revolutionary bill. It's a modest bill. And this is what he told me. This is a conservative Republican. I think there were 3 Democrats, 3 Republicans, all moderate to conservative, working on this piece of legislation. I don't know if it's any good or not, okay? Probably not, to tell you the truth. But this is how bad the situation is. This guy is in a safe seat, safe Republican seat. He is not up for re-election, not up for re-election. The moneyed interests who feel threatened by this legislation are putting radio and television ads big time in his state right now. He's not even up for election. All he is doing is sponsoring a modest piece of legislation, one that would probably be too conservative for most of us. But the message is, don't even think about it. You think about bringing forth a modest piece of legislation that might impact Wall Street. We got ads going up in your state, and you're not even running for election. Think about what happens when you run. That's what we are up against. So if somebody like me were elected president of the United States, you know what happened the day after? You know what would be on television? You know every scandal that would take place, so-called scandal, that the CNNs and the ABCs would be talking about day after day after day? And how do you defeat that? That's what you have to think about. Because if I give you an example of, honest to God, a conservative Republican being attacked by Wall Street because they came up with a modest proposal, think about what would happen when we demanded the rich and the large corporations to start paying their fair share of taxes. What would happen? So the point is, it's not whether, you know, I run or not, something that I'm thinking about, going to Iowa next week, talk to people there. No, this is the point. I don't say the same thing to people in Iowa, not me. Neither I nor anybody else can succeed unless, in a sense, there is a political revolution, and that is that millions of people are mobilized, are not just looking at CNN and ABC, but are getting real information about real issues and are mobilized and are prepared to fight. That is the absolute truth. We cannot make changes. It's not good enough anymore to elect even good presidents or good senators. We need a bold and aggressive grassroots movement that this country has never seen in its modern history.